Hello, all. Welcome to this session, which is adaptive thinking, leveraging creativity and innovation in problem solving. My name is Taylor Bradley. I will be your host today. But now let's move forward with the most important part, and that is introducing our panelists. So let's go ahead and bring our panelists in here. Welcome to all of the panelists. It is great to see some familiar faces, and I'm really excited about our talk here today. First, let's go through some introductions. So I would ask all of you, we'll go one by one, share your name, where you're working at currently, and where you're working from today. I will start with Tracy. If you can introduce yourself and then tag the next person, and we'll go through everyone.
Sounds good. Thanks, Taylor. Looking forward to it. I'm Tracy Brower. I'm the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase. My PhD is in sociology of work and how we affect our work, how it affects us. I've written a couple of books, The Secrets to Happiness at Work and Bring Work to Life, and I write for Forbes and Fast Company. I have been in the HR space for, oh my goodness, a couple of decades or so. So really, really looking forward to this conversation and learning from all of you and the really, really fundamental nature of creativity and innovation and problem solving within the field of HR. So maybe I'll just say, Lisa, how about you next? We'll keep it simple in terms of the clockwise pattern.
Awesome. Good morning. I'm Lisa Nareski. I am the Chief Human Resources Officer for First Harvest Credit Union. I'm newer in my role. I've only been here for about 3 months. Prior to that, I worked in fintech, which is really exciting and fun and certainly allowed me to do a lot of innovation and creativity there. And prior to that, I spent about 14 years working at Discover Card in a number of different progressive HR positions. And I'm in the office today. It's a bright, sunny day, which sometimes makes me look like I'm sitting in a bit of a dark cloud there. So hopefully you can see me okay, and hopefully you're enjoying the nice sunny day here on the East Coast. And I will kick it over to, is it Shari?
Sherry might be frozen, so let's kick it over to Jackie real quick. Jackie, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jackie Johnston, and I'm the founder of Talent Vantage. And really, I guide professionals through the co-creation of finding new perceptions and new perspectives of knowledge within the workplace, and then helping develop the leadership to go along with implementing those new awarenesses. I've got a blink or 2 years of experience in HR and adult learning. I really came into HR by way of adult learning and higher education, and then through workforce development, and then into business and industry. So the progressive journey of bringing people with you from diverse backgrounds is really how I see as a fundamental conduit to today's conversation. And I'm based out of Austin, Texas. And Sherry, are you live? If not, let's head on over.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, can you not hear me? Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sherry Chernak, and I am a consultant at Mercer focused on transformation, including HR, organization, and workforce transformation. My background is extensive, a couple of decades, dating myself a little bit, in people and transformation, and creativity and innovation have been areas that I have focused on as ways to unlock transformation capabilities inside organizations. And those are topics that are near and dear to my heart. So look forward to discussing with everyone today.
Hi, this is Vinod Bidwaik. I am the CHRO of largest media house in India. I am based in Pune near Mumbai. I'm Indian by nationality. I have total almost 25 years of experience in HR, industrial relations, strategy, management, and public relations. And currently, I am heading the HR function from this media company, which is diverse group of media and non-media. It's a print media, television, digital, organic farming, skilling, education, and many more. And of course, technology companies. So I am heading there as HR, responsible for total employee life cycle, strategy, business strategy, aligning with the HR strategy to the business. Earlier, I also worked as a CHRO of Alfa Laval, which is a Swedish multinational company, Royal DSM, which is again Dutch multinational company, and many more in the past, mainly on the leadership roles.
Awesome. Thank you for all of the panelists for being here today. And of course, always thank you to Hacking HR for putting these sessions on. All the listeners that are tuning in this morning, if you have any comments or questions, please type those in. I am keeping an eye on the chat, so we will try to integrate any questions that you all may have. It would be lovely to see where you all are tuning in from today. But let's get to the first question. I want to start at the ground floor here and help define, in your opinion, what is adaptive thinking? Maybe what are some of the hallmarks of adaptive thinking? And how we'll do this is I'll start with one person and then you all can tag each other, or feel free to jump in. We'll make this an organic conversation. Lisa, I'll go ahead and start with you this time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank you for having us today. When I think about the topic of adaptive thinking, I think about that as a way for us to continue to challenge what we know, what we believe, and do so in a way that continues to challenge the status quo, that is, not only reactive, right, and thinking about challenges and being able to change or to expand that thinking based on the situation, but also from an innovation perspective and thinking in advance. So that's what I would say from an adaptive thinking perspective.
I can add there, this adaptive thinking is the ability to understand what is going in the, around, either it is internal, external, and fine tune our strategies to tackle those. So it is actually the ability to learn more things, to understand what is going on there. So, we all know that this is so-called VUCA and now Bani world is creating a lot of challenges. There are expectations are totally in the different. So it is actually the adaptability about what's happening around. It is about sensing the situation, sensing the right, wrong, positive, negative, all what's happening around the world. So 2 takes from my side on this.
Yeah, I love that point about sensing, and your points as well, Lisa. I think, and sensing and sense making, right? Like adaptive thinking has to do with really staying in touch with what's going on, not just the things that agree with our perspectives, but things that might be really, really different, and then being able to make sense of those. I think another really important characteristic of adaptive thinking is that it's proactive. Like we're looking for things that might be changing, looking for things that might be different. Another characteristic of adaptive thinking is really looking for diverse ideas, different points of view, different opinions. Our algorithms today work way too well, and we tend to see only what we already agree with, or streams that we're already in. And so if we can invite in different points of view, and Lisa, you were making that point as well, so I love that. And I think another element of adaptive thinking is just a growth perspective. Like we think about, kind of a static perspective where we, kind of come to the conclusion that we're either good at something or not good at something organizationally, as individuals, as teams. But if we take more of a growth mindset, we say to ourselves, I may not have been perfect today. We may not have done this as well as we want to, but we can always build our skills. We can always adapt. We can be kind of thinking to the next level. And the last thing that I'll say is there was a brilliant researcher, Peter Senge, years ago, and he talked about double loop learning, which was like thinking about your thinking, reflecting on your thinking, not just, hey, what's my opinion, but how do I push back on myself, and how do I think about adapting that and evolving that and growing on an ongoing basis? So those are a few of the things that come to mind for me. And are we tagging the next person or just having them jump in? Sherry, tagging you. You're off mute.
All right. And I think my technical issues are solved. So, adaptive thinking for me, Tracy, you mentioned a particular, kind of learning. And I think that broad learning theme is really important, being at both the individual level and the organizational level. Can we use learning to kind of take the right things away from our experiences, both positive and adverse? And can we learn the right lessons and also incorporate what we have learned into our thinking and think about how and where to apply what we have learned? So, that I think is really important. And then I think inside an organization, having a mindset that welcomes failure, and this is something that many organizations struggle with, is very important because, if you're successful all the time, there's not necessarily any need to adapt, at least, until the circumstances change. But as we know, as both as individuals and as teams and organizations, there are always setbacks. There are sometimes failures, and so being in the yeah, having the ability to think about those, to discuss them, to permit them without the negative attribution that often accompanies them is also a really critical factor in adaptive thinking.
Hard to follow up on all those great elements. It's really a dynamic topic, right? There's many moving components into being adaptive. And I think the only thing I would maybe expand on is when we're talking about learning, that we also consider what we mean by knowledge and what we're bringing in to the conversation, from functional expert to internal, external. We all have different ways we learn, but within, or the ways we have acquired knowledge, but it isn't always the traditional sense that we like to put on job descriptions or in those type of fixed structures. And so it's really about welcoming in the diverse knowledge so you can be adaptive in your thinking and your learning and challenge your perceptions.
Some great examples so far. Like the key words that stood out to me: sensing, proactive, growth, failure, is all coming at this from different angles. Now, in November of last year, there was this new technology that exploded onto the scene. Not sure if you all heard about it. It's called ChatGPT, generative AI. This is an exciting new area for HR, but how do you all balance adapting to changes in the marketplace, innovating while staying consistent with processes that we do need to have consistency with so there's not adverse impact? Lisa, how are you addressing that in your organization?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a piece of it too is to understand, the culture and the level of excitement around some of the new technologies for your organization, right? So I was a part of an organization that was really excited about AI, and part of the role that I had to take on really quickly was kind of thinking through, how do we partner with our legal team to understand all of the downstream implications for a technology or a tool that we had never used before, that was really kind of uncharted, because we know that our employees are really going to go down the path and use it and adapt and make those decisions on their own if we don't help them think about that, right? And so, I think part of how we had to be really adaptive in our thinking in that space was more around, helping our employees to put some kind of parameters around what they were using the tool and technology for, and how to kind of think about it in the confine of our environment, and making sure that we were, ensuring some protection of our intellectual property and our data, and also making sure that we weren't crossing any kind of any lines, right, around some of those pieces. In the role that I'm in now, really different environment, right? And so, I think the adaptive piece for me comes when, now I'm challenging people to start maybe thinking about that technology, where in the last role it was, hey, maybe you're going too far. This is, hey, have we thought about how we could use it in this space, and challenging people to be more creative. So I think as an HR partner, you really have to continue to be adaptive around where your organization is, how to meet them where they are, and think through some of the challenges, that maybe aren't necessarily at the forefront of your mind, or how you're personally using the tool.
Tracy, one of the things that was brought up was embracing failure. So how would you go about creating an environment where certain types of failure are accepted while others are not? How do you balance that approach to embracing failure?
Yeah, that's a $6 million question, right? And I love your points, Lisa, about, how do we embrace new technology or embrace the new at the same time we're protecting ourselves and we're not, going off the edge of the cliff together. And I do think it has to do with like setting principles for how we engage with things that are new and setting parameters. And in the olden days, we used to ask, who owns the issue of quality, right? And the big paradigm shifting answer was that everybody owns the issue of quality. And I think it's sort of like that with innovation and creativity and problem solving as well, right? Like everybody's got to own it. And within parameters, we can reach out to it. And that's really about our ability to fail forward. And I think part of the way that we balance, like we don't want to be a failing organization, but we want to be an organization that embraces learning and failing forward. I think feedback is a really, really important element of that. Like, how do we give ourselves, give each other, give our teams feedback on an ongoing basis so we can course correct really, really quickly? How do we, feedback one. Another, how do we give people growth opportunities that are like 30% growth, right? Like we might put people in a new role if they're 70% ready for it, but they've got 30% of the way to go, right? Like we're not putting somebody in a role if they're 80% unready. We're putting them in a role if they're 70% of the way there. So another one is kind of giving people growth opportunities. I think another one is when we have systems in the organization like mentorship or coaching processes. That helps because we can give feedback along the way instead of like going over the edge of the cliff and saying, hey, how did I do? And then another one I think is for us to really focus on informal learning as a team. Like, of course, we want formal education, formal learning, but I actually just saw some fascinating new research, like literally this morning, that said it was through MIT. And it talked about how a huge percentage of the best learning that gets most deeply embedded comes when you're in the trenches together, when you're rubbing elbows, when you're sitting in a neighborhood with your colleagues and peers, when you're overhearing the tough conversation with the customer, when you're solving the problem together. So I think when we create the conditions for people to learn with their teams and for newer members to be partnering with more senior members, those also create the conditions for people to try and learn and test and fail forward. So those are a few of the things I think we can influence as HR professionals and practitioners as well.
And for the rest of our panelists, feel free to jump in. Jackie, I saw you come off mute. Go ahead and jump in.
Yeah. Both what Lisa and Tracy were sharing had me thinking about starting with self first. What is your own risk tolerance? Right? How do you personally respond to failure? Where are you fixed within previous experiences in HR leadership that maybe didn't turn out so well? And so now you've told yourself this story about why it needs to be so fixed because of compliance, regulation, all of the traditional HR things that are still very, important today in terms of risk mitigation and business viability. But at the same time, how am I showing up and how am I listening? Am I listening from a place where I am curious and open to have my mind changed? Or am I in a place where there's no negotiation? I have a non-negotiable mindset on this particular area. And so that is often where it starts. Am I getting in the way of emboldening my team and my business to really make some creative, innovative solutions?
And Vinod, from your perspective in leading teams, where is an area that you've pushed for creativity or innovation within your own team? So maybe our listeners can get some practical examples as well.
Yeah, I think other panelists already spoke, about the flexibility. So I think what we need to, challenge always. So first is self-realization that where we stand as a team, as a leader, where I stand, and as a leader, where my team stands, and then understanding the context, because sometimes are we relevant to the market or are we relevant to the business? That questions need to ask. We have a lot of, normally what happened that over a period of time, we condition our mind, we create our own assumptions. And as a human being, we think that those assumptions are right. It is not the case, because then important thing is that how we are actually first being role model as a leader, stretching ourselves, learning new things. I like, there is a Korn Ferry model about learning ability or learning agility, what they say. There are 5 dimensions of that. One is self-awareness, how we are aware about ourselves. Second is about, they speak about the mental agility, that and how we can create, how we can condition, how we can stretch ourselves beyond the boundaries. And if you like that, then it is a fun. So it should be, people should enjoy that stretching, because like we do for a fitness, for the body fitness, for mental fitness, it's also important to stretch those, because we create patterns in the brain. We need to break that pattern, sometimes create new patterns. So that is the mental agility. Then comes about the people agility, that how because we will deal with different types of people. They will be good, they will be sometimes difficult. The people will have their own assumptions. So how we are going to deal with them, influence with them, because as HR professionals, one of the capability or competency, what we say, networking and influencing, is coming on the top always, because you have to influence a lot of decisions in the organization. So how we actually are able and muscle those people agility knows in our mind is very important. And of course, then comes how we are dealing with the change. As a HR professional, it's always expected that we need to be as a change agent, change ambassador, change champion, and so many things. So how we are facilitating those, driving, of course, is the management responsibility, and it's a collective responsibility. So how we are actually facilitating, creating that culture within the organization. And finally, of course, as a result, agility, that getting right results. If we actually assess our team, I normally do that in a team members, that then it is also the reflection for them, how they are doing and what are their development areas where they can focus. So I think this is very important. And second is, it's the process, it's the journey. Result, of course, is a different thing, but it's a journey, and one should enjoy that journey. So it starts with, unlearning what we learned in past, relearning, and putting ourselves in the, putting the people and the business in the center, and designing our strategy around that. I think that is very important.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, I love all of the, Tracy, Jackie, Vinod, what you shared about, individual characteristics and coming back to, what Lisa shared about generative AI and how to facilitate that inside organizations. All of the, all of the topics that you mentioned, embracing, the willingness to try things that may or may not be successful, experimentation, learning agility, and and the multiple dimensions of agility. all apply. At Mercer, we help organizations think about how AI is going to support them, and particularly within HR. And some of the things that we have seen work really well is giving people on teams the opportunity to begin using it, giving them some thought starters, and letting them experiment and come up with use cases. And that requires a mindset of openness, of willingness to try things that may or may not be successful. It requires embracing something that may have an element of fear attached. Is AI coming for our jobs? Is AI going to make the HR function less human? We always say that at the end of the day, it also has to be about, HR has to be about doing things with people and technology. So thinking about how to blend those. And, this is an opportunity for HR to get out of that, pure compliance function box that sometimes we find ourselves in, or thought of as HR professionals. And we have to obviously set up all the guardrails so that we don't share information that is not accurate, so that we are taking all of the appropriate precautions around how to do things in a compliant way, and being thoughtful about what it means for our workforce, but also encouraging that experimentation, serving as change agents, being willing to go first in the organization in some cases. There are some pretty clear use cases in HR that can bring a lot of efficiency to the organization without necessarily resulting in the reduction of any jobs, but really about repurposing people's time. So it's a great way for HR to lead by being open, and by creating the space within the function and more broadly.
And Sherry once, in a recent conversation that her and I had, highlighted that HR can have a guild mentality when building our own teams, and taking an homogenous view that we only hire people that have HR backgrounds. How do we, or how do have you all embrace creativity and innovation to ensure you're bringing diversity of thought into your teams as well? Jackie, if it's all right, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, again, it goes back to first self-awareness and willingness to be open to the question of inviting other people. I mean, we work in HR touching all the different arms of the business, but are we inviting them in to ask, what do they need from somebody within the HR department division that will amplify, enhance how they can go about their business effectively, internal to the team and down their business line. And I think that oftentimes we don't extend the invitation internal, yet we invite ourselves in, or expect to be able to be invited in, to others. And so again, I think that by modeling that way, just internal to the organization, but then it kind of goes back to diversity of thought and being open to what we consider knowledge, right? So, and we're seeing that organizations are starting to expand on their requirements and stepping away from requiring the degree. But what other characteristics can that person bring into the department that's going to actually serve as a catalyst to the creativity, create some change agent type of conversations, but then bring them along in acquiring the HR knowledge. You can do that, right? They say we can train people. Now there's some projects and tasks you're not going to put people on right away. It's not for their best interest or for that of the company. But again, I think it's inviting other people in to our conversations about how can we amplify how we show up as a team.
Yeah, I would build on that and just say that it's been really successful to rotate people into HR. Like I think the ability for HR to be successful is for them to be business people within the business. And when the business people can also rotate into HR, I think that really works well, either on a, taking a job that's a regular full-time job or having, one position kind of float and rotate in. A really good way to do that is to figure out what are the skills that we need as HR professionals. Oh, we need great skills in, understanding financial implications. We need great skills in strategy. We need great skills in innovation, etc. How might we rotate in our people from our innovation team or our people from our finance team or our people from our strategy team? So if we start with kind of that skill basis and then provide lots of opportunity, and I think that builds empathy, right? Like it builds empathy on the part of the guild mindset in terms of HR, deep HR pros, and it builds empathy on the part of those who are rotating in. So I think that works really well. Another thing I think we can think about as well is HR people rotating out. Like our role in life, our goal in life, we may be steeped in HR, and that may be where we want to kind of spend the majority of our deep career. But if we can rotate out into another part of the business, if we can rotate out to another area of core competence, I think that's also a really, really good idea. So we get more of those sort of cross-fertilizing ideas and more of that empathy and more of that business literacy that I think is really, really helpful. I think that brings in that level of diversity, brings in that level of awareness, brings in that level of business acumen. So those are some additional strategies.
Tracy, just to piggyback off of that, as you were talking, I was thinking we sometimes even create those silos within HR too, right? Where you have someone who's really great in recruiting, but we maybe don't want to try them to help out in a technology space, right? And sometimes those are the folks that have the most expertise and are able to help drive innovation, in a way that we haven't thought about in that team, in that silo already. The second piece that I was thinking about as you were sharing is, I think as HR folks, sometimes we don't do a great job of telling our story or talking about the awesome things that we're working on that we can kind of reach across the aisle and ask our partners to be a part of. Some of the most successful projects I've been a part of or I've led have been because we were able to work with our kind of internal customers or internal partners and better understand where the problems are and actually have them help us build and then have us help kind of promote what we've done and built internally and kind of get that momentum. But if we're not excited about the work that we're doing and we can't get people excited behind us, then I think we lose that momentum of getting folks on board who really want to come across and support it. So I think that telling them the story, that being able to share what we're working on and kind of promote it internally is a really important piece for us to be able to kind of attract the talent internally, especially that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great point. What I was thinking about as you were talking to is the idea of building coalitions.
Yeah.
I'm part of a professional organization called CoreNet, which is the largest global organization of real estate facilities and architecture and design professionals. And we talk all the time about a super nucleus for the organization, which is HR, IT, and real estate, because your strategies for so many things, from talent to attraction and retention to development to performance to the strategy of the business, require that collaboration across multiple departments, and HR can so often be the catalyst for building those coalitions across departments. So I love the point. It makes so much sense.
If I can just jump in real quick, it made me think about, I recently read how we describe roles in HR as generalists. Oftentimes we need HR generalists. And it kind of put a light bulb moment for me because I've been more of a versatilist, and it was introducing the idea of being a versatilist where you can work in that nucleus of that coalition and help build the conduits to other entities. So I don't know if other people have come across that or not, but I wanted to just share that new awareness that I came from.
I can add few things here about what normally I do is identifying some project is a business challenges with the stakeholders and putting a team irrespective of their role. So the person who is handling talent acquisition is a cross-functional who is handling something talent management, who is handling all come together and work on this project, and they build the skills there because then they get the exposure to deal with the business problems. Simple thing, for example, how we can improve the employee experience or how can improve the inclusion and diversity. So it is the cross-functional team along with some business people getting there and reviewing those projects. So in my earlier organization, those projects were very successful. In current organization, we are doing this. So this is very important. Another thing is, asking the team members to go for a T-shaped learning. Perhaps everybody knows that we may be expert into that one core functional area where we are expert, but maybe learn other things also, which actually will help you to build a career. Because what we are doing today not necessarily will be relevant tomorrow. Organization expectations will be totally different. And with this generative AI, chat GPT, many roles will be redundant. And for example, the talent acquisition guys, have to think a lot because Hindustan Unilever did this experimentation few years back that in United States, in their stores, they hire almost 200 customer support executives through gamification without any intervention of the human things. After the selection, they were given the tour of the stores where they are going to work, and then they were finalized. So no human interventions. Okay, that may be the extreme because HR is about human. So we have to find out the balance between, and that is very difficult. I think as a team we need to learn, as a HR professionals we need to learn, and that's why I always ask my team to, if they are working in one area, they have to at least develop another skill in their particular another area. Another is every team member, what I ask them that compulsorily every year at least they have to work on two projects. That is one, and they have to identify, uh, innovate, create something, what those initiatives they would like to implement in the organization. And then I give the freedom to them. I empower them that, okay, these ideas, once approved, please implement in the organization. And results are amazing. I think today I proudly can say that the team is developed where, in any organization where work, the succession planning is easy for HR, CHRO, and other things where you can identify the people within the team themselves, and they are happy. Because they also get that pride that they are doing something better for the organization, and that is also the recognition from the CEOs and CXOs and the management team from the organization.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be quoted back today. I have to be careful what I say in one form that it doesn't come back in another. But no, I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think there are a lot of things that HR, leaders and team members can do. So one is, as we move from rigid jobs toward skills and projects, gigs, a more agile way of working, I think that creates a lot of opportunities for cross pollination. So, not necessarily requiring a role shift or a transfer or an open role, but having the opportunity for HR team members to work on projects outside of HR and vice versa. I'm a big fan of talent marketplaces, and I think they spark a lot of creativity and thinking about careers and ways of contributing to organizations. You know, building corporate athletes. So having, this was something that we surveyed at Mercer over 100 CHROs, and 40% of them approximately wish they had more knowledge about finance, operations, and other non-HR areas. So cultivating that sooner can create different ways of thinking, different ways of problem solving. It can, it can potentially rewire HR processes. And then I'm a huge fan of adopting and incorporating ways of working that are characteristic of different teams for problem solving. So if you think about design thinking and design oriented approaches to process change or culture change, working in an agile or sprint based approach where you continue to build and refine a minimally viable project, thinking about the continuous improvement ways of working that are often prevalent within operations, doing things like conceptual and A/B testing. It's a much more dynamic set of tools than HR has just within its four walls, to say, hey, we're thinking about designing a new talent review process, or we want to change our culture. We want to recruit different types of profiles in the future, and thinking about applying those and many other kinds of problem solving methods can really spark creativity and innovation, and also potentially bring HR closer to the owners of those tools and methods if there are owners within the organization.
And of course, one of the most exciting things about hacking HR is we get to connect with individuals from around the world. Looking through the chat today, we have individuals calling in from Sri Lanka, Canada, Kenya, and of course, the United States. So there is an opportunity to learn new creative, innovative ways just from connecting with our partners in this own community. And to do that live, we had a question come in. So let's help out one of our members. They're calling our bluff. They're okay, let's bring in people from outside of HR into HR. And how do you address that if you bring in someone from, let's call it business ops, into HR to do a session? They're going to have exposure to a lot more confidential information, perhaps about their peers. So how do you make sure you set that person up for success, as well as maintaining privacy in areas that we have to be safeguards of? So Tracy, would you like to start us out there?
Yeah, it's a great question and like so critically important. And I think we can make choices about the kind of work that they do, right? Like there's so many different elements of HR. We're probably not going to put them in comp and give them access to all the deep dive comp data, right? We're probably not going to put them in a business partner role where they're working through conflicts between employees or doing investigations, right? We're not going to have them do that kind of work, but they might be able to be, part of our strategic, proactive DEI efforts. They might be able to be part of our training and development kinds of efforts. They might be able to work on our mentorship program. They might be able to work on ways that we're activating our real estate portfolio in order to activate our talent strategy. They might be able to be involved in recruiting or in our employee value proposition and how we conceive of that. They might be able to help look at engagement survey data that comes back and look at trends, because all of that data is anonymous, right? So I think we can be really smart about what kind of work that they do, making it substantive, but also protecting the right kinds of privacy and protecting them so that we're not setting them up to fail in a role within HR that requires a deep level of proficiency, but is something that they can make substantive contributions based on their business knowledge and kind of bring their expertise to the HR expertise that's part of it as well. So I can see lots of options that still maintain that really, really critical balance. So it's a really great question. I'm glad somebody asked that.
I was just going to jump in to say, Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking about sometimes in smaller orgs where there is more of that generalist model and there's maybe no way to limit some of that exposure. I think a piece of that is that we have to kind of go back to our selection process in that we trust them, right? That they've been here and they've demonstrated a level of trust with us already. I think we have to be really clear in our expectations and helping them to understand the downstream impact of having some of this information, right? To whom much is given, much is also expected, right? And so just really being transparent about the information that they'll come across and our expectations of how they handle it and what happens if they don't. And really kind of investing in them from a training perspective too, right? And so what are the places where they're coming in? So often we're thrown into things that we haven't done before, and that's okay because that's where so much learning happens. But I think also investing in them and maybe giving them a mentor where if they're in a situation and they don't know how to handle it, they're having someone come to them and they're not sure if something's confidential, they're having access to information and they're not sure, how to protect it, right? That they have a resource that they can come to and ask questions in more of a no judgment type of environment.
I think we can define the security roles. The organization should have the organizational policy about what the information is accessible to the others and to the HR professionals. If it is clear, because definitely there are different regulations in different countries, like in Europe, it is GDPR, maybe US and different things, in India, data protection rules and many things. So where it's a possibility of litigation that we can definitely avoid. But as Tracy said, there are a lot of things which actually is not confidential, which we can take their help, which can take their support. We can include them. And this is because what I see that non-HR professionals can add more value, because sometimes we need a diverse perspective. We need something, listen to them, that what exactly the expectations is that, and then they can come on the board. Simple thing like if we want, and somebody said Sherry, I think, is a talent review, designing the new process, for example. They can be definitely the help. Like, for example, if you have a learning university or L&D programs in different curriculum, we can have their help to have, let's appoint them as a chairperson of particular curriculum where they can contribute. And that helps a lot, because then there are two things. One is ownership comes, because then it's always the challenge that what HR is doing, it's not a HR, it's a business. For me, HR is a business. It's every HR process is a business process, either talent calibration, hiring, everything. And HR is there to facilitate, to train, to guide the manager and employees. So that helps, because then the ownership, the accountability comes, and then HR also learns different perspective, because it's adaptive thinking is nothing but it's about the perspective. It's learning from those perspective and design something which is beneficial to the organization.
All right, we are coming in for a landing here in just a few minutes. So I'd like to get two quick questions in as we head towards closing here. So the first one is about, how do you get your own creative energy flowing? For me, it's taking a quick walk, put some headphones on, listening to music. What do you do personally to get into that innovative, creative mindset? And if we can limit our answer to around just a minute or so we can get through another question before we close. And Jackie, would you be able to kick us off here?
Sure. So first, it's the mental mindset that I am creative and I am innovative. And so what does creativity mean to me? And giving myself permission to play with that and have some fun with that creativity. And for me, that happens outside. It can happen inside if I'm cleaning, but I prefer to be outside. So I'm going to say outside. And it's doing something that is not as mental focused, but more physical focused. So it's just creating space in my brain, kind of unconsciously, to entertain new and creative thoughts. And if I'm doing it with a group, for example, I'll integrate breakouts for walk-in talks, right? So often we're trying to do this within the environment of a conference room or an office setting. But how does that energy shift if really there's some guided discussion and some exploration then to walk and talk and discover? Because you're not having to, and you have to suspend any judgment, right? You're just there to be open and entertain ideas. And so for me, it's moving out of the office and into something physical.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, I love the ideas about changing your location and mixing things up and, trying to stimulate your brain power in a different way. I was going to share that there's an exercise that I sometimes like to do, really around kind of standing in the future, right? So I imagine myself having already accomplished what it is that I'm going to accomplish and kind of thinking about what success looks like and kind of starting back from that, right? This is the project that I'm working on. Maybe it's implementing a new tool. And at the end of that process, this is how the tool's going to work. Here's how it's going to function. Here are how the customers or the folks that are using the tool are going to interact with it. Here's how people are going to feel about it, right? Here are the results that we're going to get from it. And then really kind of try to think about how do I work backwards around kind of getting to that ideal state. And how will I know that I got there? So for me, just that kind of that visualization of having that success sometimes puts me in the mindset to start thinking about, yes, we can really accomplish this. Yes, we can do it. And this is how exciting we're going to feel when it happens.
Yeah, I love that. We used to call that backward from perfect. Like put yourself in what that perfect is and then work backward from it. But I just love that backward from perfect language and visioning. It works so well as individuals and groups. I get into a creative mindset by doing research. I'm just so curious. There's so many different topics that you can kind of go deep and wide and learn so much. So research gets me thinking creatively. And then I read a ton, both fiction and nonfiction. And I don't know, sometimes all those different dots, right? Like it's easier to connect the dots when there's lots of dots there. And I agree. I love to walk long distances and I love to be outside when I'm doing that. And so those things all help me to light sort of that creative fire.
Yeah. This first one is definitely not a do as I do recommendation. I do a lot of my most creative thinking in the middle of the night when I wake up. But I think what to take away from that is that sometimes when our our time is unencumbered by the activities of the day and by our work and so forth. So finding what that looks like for you. Hopefully, it's not at 3 or 4 in the morning. Although I have candidly gotten some of my most creative and innovative thinking done at that hour. As a consultant, I've facilitated a lot of sticky note exercises, and I do them myself as well. So if I'm trying to get unstuck or think about doing something, I'll kind of do an idea generation and put 50 ideas on a sticky one of those one of those technology enabled ones, so I don't have them all over my office or anything like that. But if 5 of those are good, and that's again that fear, embracing failure, no idea being a bad idea, but just one that sparks. And then, from a team perspective, I like to have conversations with colleagues where we say, okay, we're not going to talk about work, or we're not going to talk about the challenge that's on all of our minds. And often where we go organically to topics that have seemingly nothing to do with work can bring us into a much more creative space and potentially bring back elements from those conversations to our work when we return to it.
For me, there are different tools. One is, of course, sometimes as a fun, what we do is a reverse brainstorming, that what worst we can do, and then designing this strategy. Okay, for example, how the bad employee experience can be, and what HR can do to create very bad employee experience. And then there may be a lot of points coming together, and then working on that reversely. So that is one of the tools. But many things about writing, reading, mind meditation, mindful walk. Meditation is very important. That gives, sometimes when you are really going deep, you get many ideas, because that automatically comes. And of course, reading a lot, because then you can correlate things. So for example, one idea may be something totally different, and can we actually think that idea can be implemented in another way, which may not be related to anything related to your business, but then sometimes it can work very well. Because if you see that there is an example of bubble wraps, that where the wrapping is done, the idea was totally different. The product was designed for something different, and that used now in a packaging industry. It was used, the invention was done for the chemical industry for particular things, but then that idea is implemented in logistic industry, in supply chain, where packaging. So sometimes that helps. And there are many things where sometimes it is just sitting cool without thinking much, and then all of a sudden something comes that, okay, can we do? The important thing is how to keep the track of those ideas, how that ideas can be commercialized or implemented in the organization, and then that ecosystem we need to create.
Thank you all. And I'm going to ask you here in just a minute, what is your favorite resource to get new information and learn from, whether it be a book, podcast, audiobook, research. And so be thinking on that. And we only have time to really just share what it is. And I'll come back to you all in just a minute. But first, I want to thank everyone for attending here today. I highly encourage all of the participants and the listeners to go on LinkedIn and connect with all of these amazing individuals, great content and great connections to have. So I do encourage all of you listeners to go out and connect with all these individuals today. I know many of them do research and publish great reports. So great opportunity to connect. Annabelle, thank you for raising your question. I'm a rookie in HR and do not always have eloquent verbiage and terminology used in HR. What is the best advice you can give to someone like me? You're getting great advice in the channel, but also maybe connect with these individuals and shoot that question over to them. But I like the one response: be yourself, look to make impact in the business. It's not about learning all the HR terminology and things like that. So in closing, just so we end on time and I don't get my hands slapped by anybody, I'll go now to the panelists. What is your favorite podcast, audiobook, tool, anything like that you'd like to share? We will go ahead and start with Anand.
Many, but I will not take much time. But I like the book written by Rod Dobelli about how to think critically. Is how to create art of creating critical thinking is the best book where it gives different perspective. And of course there are many. I would like to recommend all the religious scriptures or ancient scripture in different countries we have, that gives a ample knowledge. Like in India, we read Bhagavad Gita, maybe Bible, maybe Quran. Everything has a perspective there, and they thought many years ago they thought differently. So I think that makes the larger impact in our lives.
Thank you. Tracy, we'll go over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I read extensively, so you can look me up on Goodreads. It's just Tracy Brower. I read a really, really good one lately called The Geography of Genius, and how there are certain places where genius tends to spring up. And I'm really active on LinkedIn as well. You can look me up there, Tracy Brower, PhD. Lots and lots of articles with links to original research that I think are really great sources in terms of creativity and innovation, adaptive thinking, and problem solving.
Lisa?
I'm going to say my favorite thing to do when I'm trying to think creatively is really just to kind of jam with people who think differently than me, right? Like if I can pull up a thought partner, especially someone who isn't in HR and who can kind of help me maybe dissect something in a different way, right? Like I have a person who leads our member experience side who's awesome to just kind of jam with and say, hey, here's something I'm thinking through, and how would this play out on your side of the house, right? So I think having those thought partners who don't think the same way that you do, who maybe don't think by the same constraints or confines that we do sometimes in HR, really helps me. Favorite, I'm reading Adam Grant, Hidden Potential right now. So far that's really been a great read, but yeah.
Thank you. And Sherry, Jackie, we have about 20 seconds left. So Sherry, could you go ahead and go?
All right. Well, I'm a podcast listener, always in 2X, and some of the ones that I think can spark creativity, for me, or kind of slow down all of the interrupters in my brain. Ones like Hidden Brain, 10% Happier, and 99% Invisible are ones that I think are really thought provoking.
Thank you, Sherry. And Jackie.
Quick. So if you're not following Jeremy Utley, he's a professor at Stanford University and author of Idea Flow. Sign up, follow his blog. He really goes what's beyond the prompt and dives in. And I just also want to expand thinking about our employees, the people that we're working with, and helping them identify if they are creative. Of course they are, but they may need to relearn that and move from the Bloom's taxonomy of higher level thinking so they can get to that level of creativity.
Thank you, Jackie. Well, thank you to all of our panelists today. And most importantly, thank you to the audience for joining us. Please connect with all of these great panelists on LinkedIn and Hacking HR. Thank you. That will end our panel today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.